Good afternoon. Today we are discussing about the topic skeletal muscle relaxants of pharmacology. Skeletal muscle relaxants are a group of drugs which act peripherally at the neuromuscular junction or directly on the muscle fiber, or it acts centrally on the cerebrospinal axis to cause the paralysis or reduce the muscle tone. So skeletal muscle relaxants എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് these are the drugs which are acting centrally on the cerebrospinal axis, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ they act directly on the peripherally on the neuromuscular junction or directly on the muscle fibers, and they cause paralysis of the muscle fibers or they reduce the muscle tone. Skeletal muscle relaxants മെയിനായിട്ടും മെഡിക്കൽ ഫീൽഡിൽ they have different applications, such as they are given along with general anesthetics in order to have muscle relaxation during surgeries. It is also used during intubations such as tracheal intubation, and it is also used in cases of painful muscle spasm such as multiple sclerosis. Now we can go through a normal neuromuscular junction. ഒരു നോർമൽ ന്യൂറോമസ്കുലർ ജംഗ്ഷനിൽ വെൻ വി ഗീവ് a stimuli to the presynaptic neuron, it will lead to the release of calcium from the calcium channels, which will result in the release of acetylcholine into the synapse from the acetylcholine vesicles. The acetylcholine which is released into the synapse will then bind to acetylcholine receptors which is present on the muscle end plate. The binding of acetylcholine into the receptors will result in sodium influx and further conduction of the impulse, resulting in depolarization of the muscle end plate. The depolarization of muscle end plate will result in muscle contraction. അപ്പോൾ ഇതാണ് ഒരു നോർമൽ ന്യൂറോമസ്കുലർ ജംഗ്ഷനിൽ നടക്കുന്നത്. ഇനി we can go to the action of muscle relaxants. The muscle relaxants are primarily divided into, looking into the classification of muscle relaxants, they are primarily divided into central and peripherally acting skeletal muscle relaxants. The peripherally acting skeletal muscle relaxants are further divided into neuromuscular blocking agents and directly acting agents. The directly acting agents consist of dantrolene sodium and quinine, while the neuromuscular blocking agents are further divided into non-depolarizing or competitive blockers and depolarizing blockers. The depolarizing blockers consist of succinylcholine, and non-depolarizing blockers are again divided into long-acting, intermediate-acting and short-acting drugs. The long-acting drugs mainly consist of D-tubocurarine, pancuronium, doxycurine and pipacuronium, while the intermediate-acting compounds consist of mainly vecuronium, atracurium and cisatracurium. The only short-acting non-depolarizing blocker or only short-acting neuromuscular blocking agent is mivacurium. Now we can go to the mechanism of action of the neuromuscular blocking agents. അതിനു മുമ്പ് ഒരു ന്യൂറോമസ്കുലർ ജംഗ്ഷനിൽ the receptor which is going to bind the receptor to which the acetylcholine is going to bind is the NM receptor. NM receptor ആണ് ന്യൂറോമസ്കുലർ ജംഗ്ഷനിൽ പ്രസന്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ളത് at the muscle end plate. We know that the NM receptors are ligand gated channels. They will help in the passage of sodium through them and results in the sodium influx to the muscle end plate. അപ്പോൾ ഒരു നോർമൽ NM റിസപ്റ്ററിൻ്റെ സ്ട്രക്ചർ നോക്കിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഒരു നോർമൽ NM റിസപ്റ്റർ ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് എ പെൻറ്റാമറിക് പ്രോട്ടീൻ കൺസിസ്റ്റിംഗ് ഓഫ് 5 സബ് യൂണിറ്റ്സ്, 2 ആൽഫ സബ് യൂണിറ്റ്സ്, 1 ബീറ്റ, 1 ഗാമ ആൻഡ് എ ഡെൽറ്റ സബ് യൂണിറ്റ്. The 2 alpha subunit has 2 acetylcholine binding sites. The acetylcholine, using its cationic heads, positive charged cationic heads, the acetylcholine binds to these 2 alpha subunits, and the alpha subunit has the accumulation of certain negative charges also. As a result of the binding of acetylcholine, the sodium channels of these receptors will be opened, results in sodium influx, and there will be resultant muscle contraction. ഇതാണ് ഒരു നോർമൽ NM റിസപ്റ്ററിൻ്റെ കേസിൽ സംഭവിക്കുന്നത്. ഇനി ഗോയിങ് ടു ദി മെക്കാനിസം ഓഫ് ആക്ഷൻ ഓഫ് ദ ന്യൂറോമസ്കുലർ ബ്ലോക്കിംഗ് ഏജൻറ്റ്സ്. അപ്പോൾ ന്യൂറോമസ്കുലർ ബ്ലോക്കിംഗ് ഏജൻറ്റ്സ് മെയിനായിട്ടും ദേ ആർ ഡിവൈഡഡ് ഇൻ ടു നോൺ ഡീപോളറൈസിങ് ഓർ കോമ്പറ്റിറ്റീവ് ബ്ലോക്കേഴ്സ് ആൻഡ് ഡീപോളറൈസിങ് ബ്ലോക്കേഴ്സ്. നമ്മളിവിടെ ആദ്യം നോക്കാൻ പോകുന്നത് കോമ്പറ്റിറ്റീവ് ഓർ നോൺ ഡീപോളറൈസിങ് ബ്ലോക്കേഴ്സ് ആണ്. അതിനകത്ത് മെയിനായിട്ട് വരുന്നത് D-tubocurarine ആണ്. ബട്ട് ദ D-tubocurarine ഈസ് നോട്ട് യൂസ്ഡ് ക്ലിനിക്കലി. അതിൻ്റെ റീസൺ നമ്മളിനി പറയും. The competitive blockers are bulky molecules which bind to the pentameric acetylcholine receptors present in the neuromuscular junction. Normally acetylcholine ഈ acetylcholine receptors ബൈൻഡ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ it will result in the opening of sodium channels by certain conformational changes of the receptor. But since the competitive blockers are certain bulky molecules, it will not allow the conformational changes to take place in these receptors. As a result, sodium influx does not take place and depolarization of the muscle end plate does not take place. As a result, muscle action potential is not produced and leads to the paralysis of the muscle, or the muscle contraction does not take place. This is what happens when a competitive blocker binds to acetylcholine receptor. Now, since it is a competitive blockade, it can be reversed by the action of anticholinesterases like neostigmine. Going to the depolarizing blockade, mechanism of action of depolarizing blockade. The main drug is succinylcholine. Here, these drugs have affinity towards the acetylcholine receptors as well as they exhibit a submaximal intrinsic activity at these receptors. In the case of competitive blockers, they have affinity towards the receptor but there is no intrinsic activity. There is only mere binding of the drugs to the receptors. They have no intrinsic activity. While in the case of depolarizing blockers such as succinylcholine, they have affinity towards the NM receptors as well as they exhibit an intrinsic activity, a submaximal intrinsic activity towards the NM receptors. When they bind to the NM receptors, they initially depolarize the muscle end plates. That is, depolarization of the muscle end plate will take place. As a result, sodium influx and fasciculations or twitching of the muscle fibers will take place in the initial stages. But the succinylcholine normally hydrolyze ചെയ്യുന്നത് pseudocholinesterase അല്ലെങ്കിൽ plasma cholinesterase ആണ്. Succinylcholine cannot be hydrolyzed by acetylcholinesterase which is present in the neuromuscular junction. As a result, the succinylcholine which is bound to the acetylcholine receptors will remain intact there on the receptors itself and they will continue to stimulate the receptors. The prolonged depolarization of the muscle end plate will lead to the desensitization of the acetylcholine receptors. As a result, there will be flaccid paralysis of the muscle fibers. ഇതാണ് ഒരു ഡീപോളറൈസിങ് ബ്ലോക്കേഡിൻ്റെ കേസിൽ സംഭവിക്കുന്നത്. നോർമലി ടോട്ടലി ഉള്ളൊരു മെക്കാനിസം ഓഫ് ആക്ഷൻ ഇതാണ്. ബട്ട് വെൻ ദർ ഈസ് എ ഹൈ കോൺസെൻട്രേഷൻ ഓഫ് സക്സിനൈൽകോളിൻ അറ്റ് ദി ന്യൂറോമസ്കുലർ ജംഗ്ഷൻ, we can divide this mechanism of action into two phases, phase 1 block and phase 2 block. In the case of phase 1 block, it results from the continuous depolarization of the muscle end plate as a result of the absence of hydrolysis of succinylcholine. After the continuous depolarization, there will be a decline of the action and phase 2 block will supervene. When the phase 2 block take place, it results from the desensitization of the acetylcholine receptors, and the phase 2 block resembles the non-depolarizing blockade which is caused by D-tubocurarin. ഈ phase 2 ബ്ലോക്കിൻ്റെ കേസിലാണെങ്കിൽ റിസപ്റ്റേഴ്സ് പുതിയൊരു സ്റ്റിമുലസുമായിട്ട് ഒരിക്കലും റിയാക്ട് ചെയ്യുകയില്ല. കാരണം these receptors are already desensitized due to continuous stimulation. So there will be no response towards a new stimulus. As a result, it resembles non-depolarizing blockade by D-tubocurarin and hence the phase 2 block can be reversible by anticholinesterases like neostigmine. പിന്നെ phase 2 ബ്ലോക്കിൻ്റെ കേസിലാണെങ്കിൽ നമുക്ക് കാണാൻ പറ്റുന്നത് there will not be sustained contractions. The contractions will be fading. There will be fading responses. So fading of the response is seen in phase 2 block of the depolarizing blockade. Now going to the differences between depolarizing and competitive blockers. First one എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് മെയിനായിട്ട് നമുക്ക് നോക്കിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ in the case of paralysis in man, the competitive blockers will cause flaccid paralysis directly on the muscle end plate. But in the case of depolarizing blockade, initially they will cause fasciculations or twitching of the muscle fiber and then it will lead to flaccid paralysis of the muscle fibers. Another one important point എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് tetanic stimulation. After the occurrence of the block, continuous stimulation of the muscle fibers during partial block, continuous stimulation of the muscle fibers will poorly produce sustained contraction in the case of competitive blockade. അതിൻ്റെ റീസൺ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഓൾറെഡി കോമ്പറ്റേറ്റീവ് ബ്ലോക്കിൻ്റെ കേസിലാണെങ്കിൽ ഓൾറെഡി ദ റിസപ്റ്റേഴ്സ് വിൽ ബി ഇനാക്ടിവേറ്റഡ് ബൈ the drugs and there will be no further contractions. So sustained contraction cannot be seen in the case of competitive blockade even if continuous stimulations are given. But in the case of depolarizing or phase 1 block or the block by succinylcholine, we can see sustained contractions for some time also, for some more time. These are the important points, differences. Now we can go to the pharmacokinetics of these drugs. All the neuromuscular blockers are not orally absorbed. They cannot cross cell membranes. They do not cross blood-brain barrier or the placental barrier, and they have low volume of distribution. Mostly these drugs are injected IV or IM, and hence since it is not orally absorbed, it cannot be orally administered. The competitive blockers are mostly metabolized by means of liver or kidney, and the succinylcholine is hydrolyzed by pseudocholinesterases or plasma cholinesterases. Now we are going to the individual compounds of competitive blockers. കോമ്പറ്റേറ്റീവ് ബ്ലോക്കേഴ്സിൻ്റെ കേസിൽ അവരുടെ ആക്ഷനിൽ നമ്മൾ മെയിനായിട്ടും കൺസിഡർ ചെയ്യുന്നത് 3 പോയിൻറ്റ്സ് ആണ്. ഒന്ന് ഹിസ്റ്റമിൻ റിലീസ്, വെദർ ദേ റിലീസ് ഹിസ്റ്റമിൻ. രണ്ടാമത്തെ ഫാക്ടർ വെദർ they have any effect on the vagal actions or the autonomic ganglia. മൂന്നാമത്തെ പോയിന്റ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് വെദർ ദേ ഹാവ് എനി കാർഡിയോവാസ്കുലർ ആക്ഷൻസ്. അപ്പോൾ ഈ 3 പോയിന്റിൻ്റെ ബേസിലാണ് നമ്മൾ ഓരോ കോമ്പൗണ്ടിനെയും അനലൈസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. ഫസ്റ്റ് ഡ്രഗ് ഈസ് D-tubocurarine. As we have said above, D-tubocurarine has no clinical use. And the reason എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് D-tubocurarine will release histamine which will result in bronchospasm and hypotension. It will also cause ganglion blockade and results in cardiovascular actions. Hence, it is not used clinically. Next drug is pancuronium. Pancuronium is a synthetic and steroidal compound. It has low histamine release and produce mild ganglionic blockade. Hence, it can be used. Since it does not produce bronchospasm or cardiac arrhythmias. But the direct IV injection of pancuronium will result in vagal blockade and resultant tachycardia. So always the IV injection of pancuronium should be done only under the supervision of an experienced clinical practitioner. Pancuronium has longer duration of action and hence it is used in prolonged surgeries. The next drug is doxycurium. Doxycurium is also long acting, hence it is also used in prolonged surgeries. There is less cardiovascular effects due to minimum histamine release. Next drug is pipacuronium. Pipacuronium is also a steroidal compound. It is also used in prolonged surgeries due to its long duration of action, and there is only transient hypotension and bradycardia. So the drugs which have longer duration of action and which are used in prolonged surgeries are pancuronium, pipacuronium and doxycurium. Next drug is vecuronium. Vecuronium is intermediate acting. It has only mild histamine release and ganglionic action. It is commonly used in case of routine surgeries and intensive care units. So the drug which is commonly used in routine surgeries and intensive care units is vecuronium. Next drug is atracurium. Atracurium is intermediate acting. The specialty of atracurium is that it is eliminated by means of Hoffmann elimination. Hoffmann elimination is a chemical reaction which is non-enzymatic and spontaneously taking place at a particular pH and temperature in the body. So, atracurium is the drug which can be eliminated mainly by means of Hoffmann elimination and some part by means of hepatic metabolism. Very mild part of atracurium is eliminated by means of digestion by cholinesterases. There is dose-dependent release of histamine in case of atracurium which will result in hypotension. The prolonged use of atracurium will result in accumulation of a metabolite in the brain which will cause CNS toxicity. Next drug is cis-atracurium. Cis-atracurium is an enantiomer of atracurium. There will be no degradation by plasma cholinesterase and limited degradation by hepatic metabolism for cis-atracurium, and hence there will be minimum accumulation of toxic metabolites for this drug. This is the speciality of cis-atracurium and the advantage of cis-atracurium over atracurium. Cis-atracuriumത്തിന്റെ degradation is taking place by means of mainly hepatic metabolism and Hofmann elimination, and there is no degradation by means of plasma cholinesterase. So less amount of metabolites are accumulated and toxicity is also minimum. There is no histamine release, and it is one of the preferred muscle relaxants, especially for liver or kidney patients due to these features. Next drug is rocuronium. Rocuronium is also intermediate acting. It can be used as an alternative for succinylcholine in case of tracheal intubation, thereby avoiding certain demerits of depolarizing blockade. The rocuronium, when it is administered at a dose of 0.6 mg per kilogram, the conditions for tracheal intubation will be attained within 90 seconds. And these conditions will be attained within 60 seconds when rocuronium is attained at a dose of 1 mg per kilogram. It is also used to facilitate mechanical ventilation at a dose of 0.3 to 0.6 mg per kilogram per hour IV. There is only minimum release of histamine by rocuronium. Mivacurium. Mivacurium is the only short-acting drug in the case of neuromuscular blockers. But there may be a fall in BP, but there will be only minimal change in the heart rate. Now going to the drug interactions of neuromuscular blocking agents. General anesthetics. The first interaction is general anesthetics such as ether, halothane, isoflurane, etc. Interacts with these drugs to potentiate the action of competitive blockers. So these general anesthetics, when used along with competitive blockers, will potentiate their action. Next one is anticholinesterases such as neostigmine. As we said above, they will reverse the action of competitive blockers. The neostigmine at a dose of 0.5 to 2 milligram IV is used for recovery from residual blockade by pancuronium at the end of operations. Pancuronium operations, prolonged operations use ചെയ്യുന്ന drug ആണ്. So after the operations, the action of pancuronium can be reversed by the administration of neostigmine IV 0.5 to 2 milligram. Prior atropinization blocks the muscarinic actions of neostigmine. Neostigmine has both muscarinic and nicotinic actions. So the muscarinic actions of neostigmine can be prevented in these cases by prior administration by the administration of atropine or glycopyrrolate at a dose of 5 to 10 microgram per kilogram IV. Next one is aminoglycoside antibiotics. Aminoglycoside antibiotics potentiates the competitive blockers by inhibiting the presynaptic release of acetylcholine by competing with calcium. അവരെ കാൽഷ്യം ആയിട്ട് കോമ്പീറ്റ് ചെയ്തിട്ട് they will inhibit the presynaptic release of acetylcholine and thereby causes neuromuscular blockade. Next one is calcium channel blockers. Calcium channel blockers will potentiate the action of neuromuscular blockers by preventing calcium release in the presynaptic neuron and thereby inhibiting the release of acetylcholine. Diuretics. Diuretics produces hypokalemia, which will result in potentiation of action of neuromuscular blockers. Diazepam, propranolol and quinidine will enhance the action of these blockers. And high dose of corticosteroids. These will reduce the competitive blockade. Going to depolarizing blockers. These are the next division of drugs consisting of succinylcholine. The main drug is succinylcholine. The succinylcholine is rapidly hydrolyzed by pseudocholinesterases. And they cannot be hydrolyzed by acetylcholinesterase. It has the adverse effects like muscle fasciculations, soreness, changes in BP and heart rate, arrhythmias, histamine release and potassium efflux. potassium efflux will lead to hyperkalemia. The spontaneous recovery from the action of succinylcholine in about 5 minutes is present. So, it is the shortest acting drug in case of peripherally acting muscle relaxants. There is only 5 minutes of action. It can provide good intubating conditions like relaxed jaw, vocal cords apart, and immobile with no diaphragmatic movements. These conditions for tracheal intubation can be provided within 1 to 1.5 minutes by succinylcholine. But the administration of succinylcholine should be avoided in younger children due to the risk of hyperkalemia and cardiac arrhythmias. There is a risk of regurgitation and aspiration of gastric contents mainly in the GERD patients, and the main adverse effect of succinylcholine is malignant hyperthermia. The drug interactions of succinylcholine. Malignant hyperthermia is produced by the administration of succinylcholine along with the use of halothane and isoflurane. These are fluorinated anesthetics, general anesthetics. The use of succinylcholine along with these drugs will result in malignant hyperthermia, especially for genetically susceptible individuals. Now, the uses of neuromuscular blocking agents. They are used as adjuvants in general anesthesia so that they can produce necessary muscle relaxation needed for surgery, and they also prevent or reduce the reflex muscle contractions. Vecuronium, cisatracurium and rocuronium are the mostly used non-depolarizing agents in case of surgeries for a general anesthesia. Succinylcholine having a short duration of action is used in the case of brief procedures such as endotracheal intubation, laryngoscopy, bronchoscopy, etc. Next use is assisted ventilation. It is used by the continuous infusion of subparalyzing doses of a competitive neuromuscular blocker. Subparalyzing doses of a competitive neuromuscular blocker is administered by continuous infusion for assisted ventilation. Convulsions and trauma due to electroconvulsive therapy. These are relieved by using succinylcholine. In this case, there is electroconvulsive therapy. For preventing the convulsions and trauma due to electroconvulsive therapy, we can use succinylcholine, and an alternative for succinylcholine in this case is mivacurium. Tetanus and status epilepticus, when cannot be controlled by other drugs, these can be administered. These neuromuscular blocking agents can be administered to control tetanus and status epilepticus. Next division of drugs is directly acting muscle relaxants. We have already said that peripherally acting neuromuscular agents are divided into neuromuscular blocking agents and directly acting agents. We were talking about neuromuscular blocking agents, which was divided into non-depolarizing blockers and depolarizing blockers. The next division is directly acting muscle relaxants. The most important among directly acting muscle relaxants is dantrolene. Dantrolene acts by direct action on the muscle fiber. This drug acts on the ryanodine receptors releasing calcium, which is present in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Dantrolene acting on the ryanodine receptors will result in inhibition of calcium release, which will result in the inhibition of depolarization of the muscle fibers and leading to muscle relaxation. They are absorbed. This drug is absorbed slowly from the GIT, which will penetrate the brain and produces some amount of sedation. Dantrolene, which is administered at a dosage of 25 to 100 mg 4 times a day, reduces spasticity in multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, etc. Dantrolene, which is administered at a dose of 1 mg per kilogram IV, can act as the drug of choice for malignant hyperthermia. Malignant hyperthermia was the after effect of interaction of succinylcholine with the fluorinated general anesthetics such as halothane and isoflurane. So, the drug of choice for the treatment of malignant hyperthermia is dantrolene at a dose of 1 mg per kilogram IV. Adverse effects of dantrolene are sedation, malaise, lightheadedness and other central effects. Now going to the toxicity of these drugs, neuromuscular agents, they can cause respiratory paralysis and apnea, flushing, which is most commonly seen for D-tubocurarine due to histamine release. The next one is fall in BP and cardiovascular collapse. This is particularly seen in the case of digitalized patients using succinylcholine. Histamine releasing neuromuscular blockers, they can precipitate asthma. Larger doses of succinylcholine will lead to post-operative muscle soreness and myalgia. Succinylcholine can trigger malignant hyperthermia in patients who are anesthetized with fluorinated anesthetics, as we have said above. And the drug of choice for the treatment of malignant hyperthermia is dantrolene sodium. Now going to the next major division of skeletal muscle relaxants, that is centrally acting skeletal muscle relaxants. They are again divided into mefenacin congeners, benzodiazepines, GABA mimetics and central alpha-2 agonist. The mefenacin congeners include carisoprodol, chlorzoxazone, chlormazepine and methocarbamol. Benzodiazepines include diazepam. GABA mimetics include baclofen and thiocolchicoside. Central alpha-2 agonist is tizanidine. Going to the first division, the centrally acting skeletal muscle relaxants are the drugs which reduces the muscle tone and which reduce the muscle spasm by their action on the cerebrospinal axis without altering the consciousness of the patient. The first drug is carisoprodol. Carisoprodol is a mefenacin congener. It is a weak analgesic and it has also antipyretic and anticholinergic properties. It is a muscle relaxant. Having the muscle relaxant is to sedative activity ratio, which is favorable for its use for the clinical purposes. It is used in cases of tissue injury, muscle sprains and disorders associated with local muscle spasm. Next drug is chlorzoxazone. Chlorzoxazone is also a mefenacin congener with longer duration of action. It is used in cases of acute muscle spasm due to trauma or muscle pain. Chlorzoxazone is taken orally. Next one is chlormazepine. Chlormazepine has anti-anxiety and hypnotic actions also. Methocarbamol. Methocarbamol has less sedative and longer acting than mefenacin. It is orally administered in cases of reflex muscle spasm and chronic neurological disorders, while methocarbamol can be administered by IV route for orthopedic procedures and tetanus. All these drugs, that is mefenacin congeners, have sedation and gastric irritation as the major side effects. Sedation and gastric irritation are the major side effects of the mefenacin congeners. Next one is diazepam. Diazepam is a benzodiazepine group of drug. It is a prototype drug of benzodiazepines and it acts on the benzodiazepine receptor which is located in the brain. The action of this drug will reduce muscle tone by supraspinal action. It will not cause gastric irritation and has minimal sedative effect. It is used in cases of rheumatic disorders with muscle spasm. The dosage at which diazepam is used is 5 mg thrice daily orally and 10 to 40 mg IV in case of tetanus. Next drug is baclofen. Baclofen is a GABA receptor agonist. GABA receptor are of two types, GABA A and GABA B. Baclofen is a GABA B receptor agonist. GABA B receptors are G protein coupled receptors which will hyperpolarize and alters the calcium flux in the neurons. So GABA B receptors എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് G protein coupled receptors ആണ്. They will alter the calcium flux by hyperpolarization of the neuron. Neurons they will mainly influence the potassium conductance. Potassium conductance alteration ഉണ്ടാവുന്നതുകൊണ്ട് it will result in hyperpolarization of the neurons and will alter the calcium flux of the neurons. This will result in the release of acetylcholine and thereby causes neuromuscular blockade. The site of action of baclofen is in the spinal cord, which will decrease excitatory neurotransmitter release. Thereby it depresses both the polysynaptic and monosynaptic reflexes. Baclofen will help to reduce the spasticity in cases of multiple sclerosis, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, spinal injuries and flexor spasms. It is relatively ineffective in cases of stroke, cerebral palsy, rheumatic and traumatic muscle spasms and Parkinsonism. Baclofen is well absorbed orally at a dose of and is used at a dose of 10 mg twice daily to 25 mg thrice daily. The major side effects of baclofen are drowsiness, mental confusion, weakness and ataxia. The sudden withdrawal of baclofen can result in hallucinations, tachycardia and seizures. Next drug is thiocolchicoside. It is also a group of GABA mimetic drug. It is a glycinergic drug and has an analgesic action also. Glycinergic drug means it will result in the release of glycine. It has been used for muscle spasms in cases of torticollis, sprains, backache, etc. when it is combined and used along with NSAIDs. The major side effects of thiocolchicoside are gastric upset and photosensitivity reactions. The dosage at which it is used is 4 mg thrice daily to 4 times a day. Tisamidine. Tisamidine is a central alpha-2 agonist which inhibit the release of excitatory amino acids in the spinal interneurons. It will inhibit the release of excitatory amino acids and facilitate the release of glycine which is an inhibitory transmitter. So glycine is an inhibitory transmitter. Tisanidine will facilitate the release of glycine which is an inhibitory transmitter and inhibits the release of excitatory amino acids in the spinal interneurons. While here thiocolchicoside itself is a glycinergic drug which will result in the release of glycine which is an inhibitory transmitter. Tisanidine results in the decreased muscle tone and spasm without reduction in muscle strength. The major indications where tisanidine can be used are spasticity due to neurological disorders and painful muscle spasms. Dosage 2 mg thrice daily to a maximum of 24 mg per day orally. The major side effects of tisanidine are dry mouth, drowsiness, nighttime insomnia, hallucinations and elevation of liver enzymes. It should be avoided in patients receiving antihypertensives. Now the major uses of these centrally acting muscle relaxants. These are acute muscle spasms. Mefenacin congeners and benzodiazepines combined with analgesics are mainly used in cases of acute muscle spasms. And these drugs can also be used in the cases of torticollis, lumbago, backache and neuralgias. Diazepam-like drugs and chlormazepine can be used in cases of anxiety and tension. Chlormazepine acts by its muscle relaxant action and anti-anxiety actions for this purpose. So, diazepam-like drugs plus and chlormazepine can be used for anxiety and tension. Next one is spastic neurological diseases. These are the diseases such as hemiplegia, paraplegia, spinal injuries and multiple sclerosis, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis and cerebral palsy. In these cases, baclofen, diazepam, tisanidine and dantrolene group of drugs can be used. But these spastic neurological diseases cannot be used by means of mefenacin group of drugs. Now going to tetanus. Tetanus, in the case of tetanus, commonly diazepam is infused IV and methocarbamol can be used as an alternative for this. We have already told that diazepam when it is injected IV at a dose of 10 to 40 mg is used in the case of tetanus and methocarbamol is used as an alternative. In the case of electroconvulsive therapy, diazepam can be used to reduce the intensity of convulsions. And orthopedic manipulations, here also diazepam or methocarbamol can be used, and the route of administration is IV. So this is overall about our skeletal muscle relaxants. Skeletal muscle relaxants mainly divide ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്നത് central and peripheral skeletal muscle relaxants ആയിട്ടാണ്. Peripheral skeletal muscle relaxants are again divided into neuromuscular blocking agents and directly acting agents. The neuromuscular blocking agents are again divided into non-depolarizing blockers and depolarizing blockers. The non-depolarizing blockers have long-acting, intermediate-acting and short-acting drugs. The directly acting, the centrally acting neuromuscular blockers are further divided into mefenazine congeners, benzodiazepines, GABA mimetics and central alpha 2 agonists. Thank you.